put your hands on your head.
Now, before I begin today's video, happy International Women's Day. Of course, I'm saying that as the evening is drawing to a close, almost in London. It's really, really cold, hence why I've got my lumberjack shirt on today, the 8th of March, 2022, a date and time check for you at 6:39 p.m. And why am I recording this video so late? Well, I've been binge watching a lot of Elden Ring footage online. I want to play that game. I'm too scared. I need to buy Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, because that's also from Software. But before I diverge into a different direction altogether, folks, yeah, The Batman is the #1 movie in the world. But do you know who's not happy? Zoe Kravitz. I told you before, I warned you, she can be and probably is insufferable even as I speak. You saw that video I made over the weekend where Robert Pattinson is declaring his love for Tifa in Final Fantasy VII, and she sat there thinking, how dare you? How dare you look at a woman with a short skirt and somebody's got healing powers? How dare you? So without further ado, folks, we're going to get into this video because I've got a few things to say and maybe 1 or 2 surprises I'm going to drop in. Now, this is a puff piece, as I like to call it, from The Guardian 6 years ago, when Zoe Kravitz declared she was blocked from Batman, or from the Batman role for The Dark Knight Rises in 2012 for being, and I quote, urban. Now, urban has a lot of connotations. I suspect from her translation, it means where she's from, associated with her ethnicity. So it's now I remember this article, I remember this story bounding around, and everybody suspected it could have been because she was going for the pivotal role of Catwoman. Now, Christopher Nolan, I doubt, had very much to do with her not being cast. I mean, he went for Anne Hathaway in the end, and I wasn't really a big fan of that choice. I love Christopher Nolan, but I don't always agree with his casting choices. And of course, I'll get to that part later on. Now, if we go over to banding into comics, it seems that Zoe Kravitz can't get enough of The Guardian. They can't get enough of her. And of course, she brings up the subject again about how she was rejected and how she claims to have been rejected because of her skin color, her complexion. Now, I don't know what the ins and outs are about this. Does she keep any receipts, any telephone numbers that might incriminate people? I doubt that very much. And again, she claims, so she is a pretender. She's an adult performer who gets paid exorbitant amounts of money to pretend on the big and small screens. So Zoe, just get over yourself a little bit, because a lot of us can't be in your privileged position. So she does go on to say, now, the thing that I had an issue with the Batman movie, I like the film, I don't love it. I might love it on a second viewing. I'm going to watch it again in a couple of weeks' time with my mate. And it's the same friend of mine who did correct me on one thing that I got wrong because I wasn't aware of it. Now, in year 1 of Batman Earth 31, Catwoman does in fact appear as an African American woman. But for some odd reason, that's the only time she appears, because apparently Frank Miller, the GOAT himself, made specific notes that she was to be of an African American origin, but it seems that in the translation, nobody else got those notes, so she went back to, or reverted back to, the normal Selena Kyle that people are accustomed to. So I don't know if she actually comes out with the white man's privilege line in that comic. They may have retooled it from the film and for today's narrative, so that's all I know. I've been scouring the internet today to try and find that specific line of dialogue, but so far I couldn't find anything. So we'll leave that as it is, and if anybody does know or can point me in the right direction, that would be great. Now, Zoe added, being a woman of color and being an actor and being told at that time that I wasn't able to read because of the color of my skin, and the word urban being thrown around like that, that was what really hard about that moment. It's kind of clumsily worded there. Now, I don't know what the color of your skin means that you can't read or do math. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Now, she doesn't blame Christopher Nolan for not her being cast in his pivotal role, whatever role that was. We don't know actually, but she thinks it might be a casting director. But, you know, it's just a very strange thing. And she goes on to say that all the script she was being sent was about the first black woman to make a muffin or something. So that that reminds me of Jim Carrey when he was rising to stardom in the mid part of his career, like after Ace Ventura, and he said that he'll be sent scripts that Tom Hanks had rejected or had initially wiped his own ass with them and cast them aside. So like she's kind of echoing that little chamber from Jim Carrey by saying a kind of a similar thing. And yeah, look, she's talked about Big Little Lies. I've never seen that series, but she said there were a few moments, because she was in that series, there was a few moments where I felt a little uncomfortable because it is such a white area. Kravitz later went on to say she felt insecure about her hair, relaxing it, putting chemicals into it, plucking her eyebrows thin because she was uncomfortable with her blackness. I'm not sure why anybody would say that, but she did, and I'm pretty sure people of a similar heritage to her will not be happy about that either. It took me a long time to not only accept, but to love it, and I wanted to scream it from the rooftops, she added. Pretty cringe. Now she goes on to explain that her grandmother appeared on The Jeffersons. This is like a 1970s to 80s show about a predominantly black American family, but her grandmother played a woman who was in a biracial relationship on TV. Now that I can get by with, awesome. But if you're saying to be a black woman on TV, what about Nichelle Nichols, who was Uhuru in the Star Trek series from the 60s, and she had a biracial kiss with William Shatner? Does anybody celebrate or talk about that? Probably not. So, it's nice of her to extol her grandma's achievements in a breakthrough show like The Jeffersons, but it's kind of like, well, I'm saying this and I'm saying that, and look, if you want to go back further, what about Butterfly McQueen and Hattie McDaniel, who appeared in a 1939 film Gone with the Wind, and I think McDaniel won the Oscar, or the Best Supporting Actress Oscar back in the day, but she doesn't talk about that. So, and of course, yeah, I would assume color held those actresses back as well, but they were pioneers in the day, and that's who she should be alluding to as well. So it's really weird that she sounds almost kind of bitter. I mean, again, she didn't totally ruin Batman for me. She was good. She wasn't horrible, but just that cringe moment of dialogue that I heard, and I thought, oh my God, are we really going there, DC Comics, Warner Brothers? Are we really going forward with that? But earlier on, I talked about the actresses they had in mind for Catwoman for The Dark Knight. Now, obviously, Anne Hathaway was the one who was chosen in the end. I didn't agree with that choice. She was okay. I mean, Natalie Portman, who is very similar in terms of the physical structure to Zoe Kravitz, big head, small shoulders. She wouldn't have made a great... I think Natalie Portman in the early part of her career could have been a good Catwoman, but when you consider who else they had in mind, I actually forgot about some of these choices. Blake Lively, I think she would have been a bit too sexy, to be honest, but yeah, I can see why they would have considered her. She's a pretty good actress, actually. That's a film where she's against a shark. I kind of like that film. That's pretty cool. Ryan Gosling as Selena Kyle. That would be awesome. But obviously, he was up for Blake. Then, of course, you had Olivia Wilde, which I do remember, which is pretty awesome. Gemma Arterton, Abby Cornish, Vera Farmiga. Back then, Vera would have been awesome. Keira Knightley, no thanks. And Charlize Theron, which I could kind of see, but Charlize Theron is just too beautiful. Catwoman is like in between, depending on your interpretation. And Emily Blunt, of course, she lost out to Black Widow because she was doing that Jack Black film. Thanks, Emily, and thank you, Jack. And I think she would have been great. Obviously, trying not to think about Emily in the black cat suit for Black Widow is something I just can't get out of my mind. But here's another choice that I forgot about. Kate Mara was considered for Selena Kyle, Catwoman. I think she would have been awesome, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, in 2004, Hattie Berry took her turn to fill those cat boots as Selena Kyle in the self-titled film of the same name. Now, that film got widely panned, widely criticized. She even got, that's Miss Berry, a Razzie for her troubles, and she accepted the award like a true female Chad that she is. Now, I've got to say, that film has gained quite a cult following following over the years. People have said that that film came out way too early in its time. It should have been around about now, but I gotta say she was inspired very much by that Jim Balent design from the 1990s. If you haven't seen that comic book run, it is pretty awesome. She's a pretty hot, sexy Catwoman. My God, I even had a poster once, a life-size poster. Why did I get rid of it? You know why? Because I'm insane. But when Hattie Berry landed the role of Catwoman, again, she wasn't going, "Hey, big spender, look at me, shaking my boobs all over the place." And I tell you what, she certainly shook them in that movie. God, I've got to watch that film again now. Now, at the end of the day, folks, I actually think there's an element of nepotism that's also the reason why Zoe Kravitz has been held back. It's not just this rhetoric of, "Oh, it's my skin color that's holding me back." I mean, what are we living in, folks? The 1970s, the 80s, the 90s? Really? Come on, man. It's 2022. It's meant to be progressive, but when you hear backwards comments like this, I really do sit back and wonder what is going on. Again, you got to think about it this way. Her stepfather is the great Jason Momoa. Her real biological parents are Lisa Bonet and Lenny Kravitz. So when you got famous parents like that, it's not an automatic God-given right you're going to be climbing or ascending that ladder to Hollywood. Again, Steve McQueen, he had a son or has a son called Chad. He didn't get very far on his late father's legacy. So I do believe there's a bit of nepotism and maybe, just maybe, an element of racism that Kravitz claims has held her back from getting pivotal roles, or maybe this key pivotal role in Hollywood. Who knows? So if you enjoyed this video today, folks, do me a big favor. Cat claw the subscribe button, hit the like button, and if I were you, I'll look out for me on my next video.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hattie Berry.
Yeah!
Like and subscribe or get your nuts Krogan crushed with Jason King.